Welcome back to our channel, where powerful stories, filled with emotion, intensity, and unexpected turns, are told with raw honesty and deep resonance. If you followed part 1 and felt the outrage over what Ronan had to endure, then you absolutely can't miss what's coming next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss a second of the rising tension in part 2 when Karen returns and the battle reaches its most dangerous phase yet. Let's begin. Part 2. The undercurrent rises. 3 months had passed since the explosive Rockvale Tribune article sent shockwaves through the Clearwood region. Langston Development Group was drowning in lawsuits, Councilman Hale had temporarily stepped down, and Karen vanished as if she had never existed. But Ronan didn't feel at peace. There were nights when he spotted headlights flickering at the far end of the forest trail. Days when mail delivered to his box had been opened before he could reach it. And then, one early winter morning, with fog still thick across the trees, he found an unmarked envelope lying on his front porch, black without a stamp or postmark. Ronan opened it. Inside was a single line, printed in crisp, bold letters. "You think you've won?" No signature, but he knew exactly who had written it. Karen was back. And this time, she didn't bring warning letters or threats. She brought a new alliance. Ashmore Holdings, a fully registered real estate group based in Nevada, with unknown shareholders and murky financial trails. They no longer used fake HOAs. They used courts, banks, and local government like chess pieces. The land was still being swallowed up. But now through private auctions, reappraisals, and revisions to special land use codes, even Dana wasn't spared. Her computer had been hacked, the original article erased from the newspaper's homepage. Ronan realized something chilling. Exposing the conspiracy didn't kill it. If in the first chapter he was a truth seeker, now he would have to become a shield for an entire community at risk of being wiped off the map. But to do that, he needed more than Dana. He needed a new ally, someone who had once worked for Langston, someone who turned on them. And that person, ironically, was the same voice who first warned him over the phone. The wind picked up as Ronan drove toward a small cafe on the outskirts of town, the meeting place arranged in silence. Dana had confirmed the identity of the contact, Evelyn Cross, former in-house counsel for Langston Development Group. She had drafted some of the first fake HOA contracts and had a direct hand in orchestrating early land seizure deals, until one of her closest friends was evicted from her ancestral home over a minor tax infraction. Evelyn resigned from the company and vanished from the radar, but clearly her conscience had never gone quiet. Ronan entered the cafe and spotted her instantly. A thin woman in her mid-30s, black coat, eyes scanning every corner of the room like she was counting security cameras. As he approached, she didn't greet him. She simply spoke, low and fast. "They've changed tactics. And this time, no one can expose them without evidence from the inside." Ronan sat down. "Do you still have anything?" Evelyn opened her bag and slid out an external hard drive. Contracts, internal recordings, detailed maps of Phase 2 development plans. But there's something more damning. The real name of the person behind Ashmore Holdings. Ronan stayed silent, but his hand tightened slightly. Evelyn looked him directly in the eyes. "It's someone the Rockvale government is about to nominate for mayor." He leaned forward. "Who?" Evelyn hesitated, then whispered, "Richard Hale." It hit Ronan like a bucket of ice water to the face. Councilman Hale, the same man who was suspended for his ties to Langston, wasn't just back. He was the political center of power in the region now. From this point on, every act of resistance wouldn't just be against a shady corporation, but against a political system weaponized by it. "And Karen?" Ronan asked, his voice gravelly. Evelyn nodded. "She's Hale's right hand, personally overseeing all current land acquisitions, but this time, not through the HOA. They're using a new program, Community Development Initiative, created by the council, fully legal, backed by investment funds, and signed by Hale." Ronan exhaled deeply, weariness washing over him, but in his eyes a new spark ignited. "So they've climbed higher, then this time we bring them down from the top." Evelyn smiled, for the first time. "I'm in." The night at the lodge was eerily quiet, but inside the small wooden cabin, Ronan, Dana, and Evelyn were wide awake. On the table lay a map of the Clearwood region, color-printed zoning files, internal audio excerpts, and a draft of a residential restructuring plan. All of them had one thing in common: Richard Hale's signature. Evelyn pointed at the map, her voice urgent. This area's already been purchased. This one's pending clearance. And this... She circled a spot in red. This is where your lodge is, Ronan. They've marked it as a priority redevelopment zone. Ronan stood, walking to the window. Outside, the forest was still. But now he knew. Behind those trees was an invisible noose, tightening. Karen didn't need to knock again. She was knocking through the legal system itself. We can't wait until we're backed into a corner, Ronan said, turning back. We have to strike first. We have to strike first, and not just with evidence, with a public event. Dana looked up. What kind of event? Ronan narrowed his eyes as if seeing fire in the dark. A community meeting, but not behind closed doors, live-streamed public with citizens, press, and local authorities all watching. What are you planning? Evelyn asked cautiously. Expose Hale, right before his mayoral nomination, Ronan replied. We'll show the entire town the truth, not just through documents, but in their own voices. Tension rose in the small room. Plans were laid out quickly. Dana would reach out to major news outlets. Evelyn would prepare the legal groundwork to ensure nothing could be silenced. And Ronan, he would personally invite every affected resident to attend. But just as they began sending out the invites, the wind changed direction. Dana's phone rang. She picked up, listened, then turned pale. What is it? Ronan asked urgently. They just issued a lockdown order on the newsroom. Reason, violation of federal information security. They're striking first. Silence filled the room. Then Evelyn broke it, laughing bitterly. Hale knows we're coming, and he doesn't plan to play fair. Ronan clenched his fist. His voice dropped, cold as steel. Good. I never planned to play fair either. The storm was coming, but this time, the first to light the match would be Ronan Vale. A crescent moon hung in the pitch-black sky, casting shadows across the cold pine trees, like sentinels guarding an ancient secret. Inside the lodge, a flickering oil lamp replaced the electricity, which had been cut off suddenly earlier that afternoon. The official reason? Routine maintenance. But Ronan, Dana, and Evelyn all knew better. It was the first warning shot. Evelyn's eyes were fixed on her laptop screen, still running on battery. She was finishing the encryption of all documents, dividing them into 10 segments, each one to be sent to a trusted contact on her "If I disappear, publish this" list. She had once written the contracts that silenced others. Now, she was crafting the evidence to shatter that silence. Dana sat across from her, taping over her laptop's camera, hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from rage. Rage over all the years she believed that one article could be enough to deliver justice. They've taken over the town council, even the security forces, she whispered. If tomorrow's meeting fails, we don't just lose the truth, we lose our freedom. Ronan said nothing. He was in the small back room of the lodge, facing a dusty old mirror. He pulled on his father's worn hunting coat, the same one used in frigid winters. But this time, he wasn't hunting animals. He was hunting those who wore the mask of righteousness. On the table lay backup recordings, photos of contracts, land maps, and the secret meeting video, ready to be shown on the big screen tomorrow in front of the entire town of Clearwood. A community meeting like no other. A closed courtroom laid bare in the light. A car engine echoed in the distance, and all three looked up. Ronan stepped onto the porch, swallowed by the darkness. A small truck rolled past, no lights, no plates. The third time that night. They're probing, Ronan said as he stepped back inside. They want to see if we're afraid. Dana looked up at him. Are you? Ronan didn't answer. He simply sat down, slipped the USB drive into his chest pocket, and picked up a sheet of paper, his prepared speech for tomorrow. Evelyn closed her laptop, stood up, and spoke like a vow. If they cut the mic tomorrow, I'll use a megaphone. If they shut down the screen, I'll stream it from my phone. If they cut power to the whole block, I'll shout every word into the darkness." The three looked at each other. No one smiled. No one flinched. In their eyes burned the fire of people who had come too far to turn back. The battle would begin at sunrise, and when it ended, either the truth would speak, or the darkness would devour the entire forest. That morning, the sky was overcast, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The Clearwood Town Community Center had never been this full. Residents poured in from every forest trail, from lands that had been threatened, from homes once marked with foreclosure notices. Now, they all sat together, shoulder to shoulder, in the wide wooden room lit by flickering fluorescent lights. On the makeshift stage, Ronan Vale stood tall, with Dana beside him holding a microphone, and Evelyn, clutching the hard drive that held their final pieces of evidence. Across from them, behind a long table draped in blue fabric, sat Karen, her once cold expression now turned blank. Beside her sat Councilman Richard Hale, now wearing a light-colored suit, smiling faintly as if he were still in the middle of a peaceful campaign. The first voice to speak was Hale's. "We're here today to begin a dialogue, to rebuild trust after a series of unfortunate misunderstandings." Ronan stepped forward, cutting him off. "Number, today is not for dialogue. Today is for exposure." The room fell silent. Evelyn plugged the USB into the projector. Images from the secret warehouse meeting lit up the wall. Karen's voice echoed through the room. "Plot G7, the forest lodge of Ronan Vale. If he pushes too far, we sue. And if he stays stubborn, we have other ways." Gasps rippled across the room. An older man in the front row stood up. "That voice. That's her. She's the one who sent my family those extortion letters." Dana switched to the second audio clip. Evelyn's voice, back when she was still inside the system, read aloud an outrageous clause from a forced eviction contract. Then came emails between Langston, Hale, and Ashmore Holdings, discussing inflated land prices, resident removals, and the fabrication of community development initiatives. Suddenly, Karen jumped to her feet. "These are fake, fabricated. None of this holds legal weight." Evelyn stepped forward and held up a printed contract. "Then is this signature of yours also fake, Karen?" The room erupted. Shouts of outrage, fist-pounding tables, dozens of people pulling out their phones to record every second. Karen backed away, her eyes now unable to hide her fear. Hale stood up, trying to seize control of the moment. "This is a political ambush. I demand this meeting be shut down." Ronan raised his hand. "Number, you don't give orders here anymore, because you no longer represent this community." Then another voice rang out from the main entrance, cold and firm. "That's enough." A federal investigator, accompanied by the local sheriff, stepped into the room, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Dana had contacted them the night before, sending over all the files in advance. And now they were here, right on cue, as if fate itself had intervened. Hale and Karen were asked to remain for questioning. The other council members stood up. None came to their defense. And Ronan, standing under the beam of light from the projector, remained silent, watching the room thaw like a forest emerging from a long, bitter winter. As police escorted Hale away, the councilman looked back over his shoulder, his eyes no longer arrogant, just smoldering with quiet hatred. "This game isn't over," Ronan answered with a calm, steady smile. "Number, it's just beginning." By late afternoon, gray clouds blanketed the sky over Clearwood, like a curtain falling on the final act of a tense play. The community meeting was over, but its echoes lingered, in every street corner, every rooftop, and every eye still struggling to believe that a man as powerful as Richard Hale had been handcuffed before them. Ronan stood alone on the lodge's porch, gazing down at the valley stretching beneath the mountain. The landscape was the same, yet everything had changed. Karen had disappeared without a trace. Hale was in custody, but no formal charges had been filed. And Langston Development Group, though exposed, still had branches operating in distant, quieter places. Dana arrived later, carrying 2 cups of hot coffee. She handed him one, her eyes fixed on the dark streaks of cloud crawling across the mountain range in the distance. "Any updates from the inspector's office?" Ronan asked. "Not yet," she replied quietly. They said it'll take weeks to compile evidence and expand the investigation. But it seems like they're under pressure. A lot of it. Evelyn stepped out of the cabin, holding a large envelope. I just received a copy of internal files from someone still inside Langston, she said. There's a list. Targets for their next expansion. It's not just Oregon. Ronan took the envelope, opened it, and scanned the names marked in red. Colorado, Utah, Montana. He clenched the paper in his hand. So, it doesn't end here. No, Evelyn said, her voice calm. This is just one of dozens of campaigns. But now they know that someone's willing to stand up, willing to expose them, and more importantly, they know they can be defeated. The three of them sat down on the wooden steps. For a long moment, no one said anything. Only the wind passed through the forest, and the sound of birds returning after days of human unrest filled the air. Ronan looked up, watching the weak sunlight pierce through the gray sky. I used to think all I needed was a place to escape the world, but now I know. The world finds you, no matter where you hide. Dana nodded, and when it does, you have to be ready. A strong gust of wind swept through, carrying a few dried leaves into the air, spinning them gently before they fell. Ronan watched them, his gaze no longer tense, but calm and resolute. This battle had quieted, but he wasn't finished. When evil doesn't disappear, it evolves. Lessons from Part 2. If Part 1 was a wake-up call about how small but dangerous forces can infiltrate our lives, then Part 2 stands as proof that evil never truly vanishes. It simply returns, in a more refined, powerful, and dangerous form. Karen didn't disappear. She merely stepped into the shadows, only to return with a new system, more organized, backed by money, legal power, and political influence. The fake HOA was replaced with a legitimate corporation, a clean public image, and a rising political star named Richard Hale, poised to become mayor. And that leads us to the first lesson. Evil always adapts. In real life, injustice, corruption, and manipulation don't always come wearing a villain's face. They hide behind tailored suits, 300-page legal documents, and charming promises of community development. That's why we must stay vigilant, even when the threat changes its disguise. Truth can't stand alone. Part 2 reveals a critical shift. Ronan couldn't fight alone. He needed Dana, the fearless journalist. He needed Evelyn, a former insider who chose redemption. And most of all, he needed a community to stand behind him. The takeaway: to challenge a powerful system, you must connect, inspire, and rally others to act with you. No victory is permanent without vigilance. After exposing the fake HOA in Part 1, Ronan might have believed he was safe. But that system didn't die. It simply stepped back, then returned with a stronger counterattack. In life, victories require constant protection, through awareness, unity, and resilience. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. Ronan and his allies knew the risks. Challenging local authorities, corporations, and lawyers wasn't just hard, it was dangerous. They could lose everything, and still, they chose to speak the truth. This reminds us, silence can kill hope, but one brave voice can save an entire community. Part 2 ends with a powerful truth. Light can overcome darkness, but not alone, not just once, and never without those willing to stand up. Do you feel the anger rising when Ronan is once again pushed into battle? This time against a system armed with power, wealth, and cold-blooded strategy? When Karen returns, no longer knocking with fines in hand, but backed by a political machine designed to crush anyone who dares to stand up. If you believe truth must be defended, if you want to see Ronan keep standing strong against those who hide behind the mask of righteousness, then like, subscribe, and share this video so others will know. Karen may change her name and face, but we do not back down. Get ready, because Part 3 will take this fight to an entirely new level. And this time, Ronan won't be fighting alone.